have 90s in March.
And I would love that, but I do know people get sick of it, so I get that.
Well, my dad lived for it.
Well, unfortunately, we're expecting down in the 30s and snow this coming week.
Well, I feel for you. We're going. Our lowest so far has been 32, but it's a little warmer than last winter so far.
All right. Well, it is 6:00, and welcome everyone. We have a really good crowd so far this evening. Our guest this evening is Jeff Kremer, and he has quite an extensive bio that it wouldn't even allow me to share the whole thing in the description of this room. So I know that Carol will probably be asking him some questions, and Jeff's going to be talking. So I'm just going to let him and explain all that he's done. And Carol, I'm sure that you've got questions, or at least know a lot more about Jeff than Karen or I do. So I'm going to let you take the floor.
Well, hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Thank you for joining us to be with Jeff tonight. And Jeff, can you tell me how you pronounce your last name? Is it Kremer, Kremer?
Yeah, it's just like the old movie Kramer versus Kramer. So it's spelled with an E, but pronounces like an A.
And I have pronounced it wrong forever, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no, it'd take a lot more to offend me than that.
Well, you came to us in a way so different than the way most people come, because most people that come to Big Cat Rescue are hoping to get a paying gig with a zoo or someplace where they can work with animals, and you were already working at a zoo, I believe, when I first met you. Can you talk about how it was or what you were doing that led you to that world?
Sure. With my wife and I, we were involved in the corporate world. I was working for Honeywell International Space Systems and involved in communications. And my lovely bride of soon to be 39 years, she was a child psychologist in the school system. And at about the 20-something year mark, we're like, man, we're like, the pay was great in the corporate world, and the vacation and benefits were phenomenal, but we were just unrewarded. For me, it became 4 cubicle walls. And we'd always been animal advocates. In fact, some group you're familiar with, Carol, the Florida Voices for Animals, we've become very active in participating with their protests for anti-fur and anti-circus and anti-rodeo, and very familiar, and they're the ones that actually led us upon the path of becoming vegetarian. And so we thought there had to be more to life than 4 cubicle walls. So I'd found an opening at the local AZA accredited zoo in Tampa at the time in education, and it was a part-time opening, and which is what Colleen, my wife, was looking for, because she wanted to hold on to her school system job to retain her pension. But we got her into the zoo and the education department part-time, and after a few months there, she got settled and learned to live on, or as our parents called it, poverty, because the zoo usually paid about $9 an hour. And at that time, the zoo was beginning to explore bringing their security force back in-house from being a contract company. And I was real interested in being around, having a career working around animals. So I went back to the state of Florida, got all my security licenses real quickly, was working 24 hours a day. And so she put the feeler in for me. I turned in my application, and I was hired on as the first person to work for their supervisor in security and bring the force back in-house. And we thought it was a dream job forever. I was born and raised in the Tampa Bay area, so I grew up with the old Lowry Park Zoo, and then it's now become Zoo Tampa. But we actually, truly thought we'd be there forever, working around 2,000 animals, just a wonderful environment. But that's how we both got into the zoo. So I started in security, and I worked the zoo. They pay poorly. It's a very interesting environment to work for. It's very adrenaline filled, but they do reward hard workers and people that just don't say no and can work in that stressful environment. And some of us did very well. So I got promoted very quickly into management in visitor services and another department in the zoo. Worked my way all the way up, and I was reporting to everybody in the zoo had a number. So number 1 is the CEO, and number 2 is the vice president, and so forth. And I was reporting to number 3, the operations director. And And for both of us, it was for about 2 years. It was nirvana. It was we couldn't have imagined anything greater. And at about the 2 year point, we stopped drinking, as we said, the purple Kool-Aid, and saw issues both with regard to animal welfare and human safety that were very concerning. And we thought, well, like in the corporate world, you went to the departments and you presented solutions, and that's how the organism worked. And so we did that and presented solutions to these issues, and in some cases presented offers of money, funds to fund the solutions. And what we will learn very quickly is that it's not welcomed. They want people to just fall in line. They don't want people to speak out. They want it done their way. And the AZA accredited zoological world is primarily a good old boy driven industry. I think probably 98 or 99% of the AZA accredited zoos in our country are led by our men, white men, and so
Old white men.
yeah, with old time thinking. And so we were rejected on numerous occasions for presenting solutions to issues with regard to animal welfare and human safety, and some bad things, some very bad things happened there. Their first chimp, one of the first chimps there, was killed in a fight in the exhibit while the zoo was opened, and Sumatran tiger got out due to human error, and it was shot and killed by the CEO. And so we planned an exit. Either at the zoo, you either can work in that world or you can't. And if you can't, you're forced out. And we decided to go out with Grace, and we planned our exit, and Colleen left first. And then I planned my exit. But in between the time of she leaving and me still being there, I had noticed that they weren't protecting. I could see where the zoo was going, and I'd worked in the web development world for a little while and created some web pages and websites, and so I'd seen they weren't protecting some intellectual property that could be very beneficial to them with regard to what they were going to name the zoo in the future. I could see that happening, so I purchased it all. So I purchased a number of intellectual domains, intellectual property, and when I chose to leave the zoo after 4 years, I decided since we couldn't make a positive difference within the zoo, we would do it outside the zoo. So we formed just she and I, Colleen and I, formed an advocacy group with the help of one friend, Brian, who was not only a zookeeper at the zoo, but a volunteer at Big Cat Rescue in large carnivores. And so I just, all the information I had researched, and I took that and I created a website, Tampa Zoo Advocates, and we began exposing them for everything that concerned us. And it led to a lot of, it rattled the cages within the zoo. The zoo sued us. We, in turn, hired probably the best intellectual property firm in the state of Florida. They loved our case so much that although they can litigate you to death because the attorneys were costing $400 an hour, but they loved our case so much that they gave us 2 attorneys for the same price. So all we're allowed to do is, we had gone, backstep a minute. The zoo had come to us at the time while I was still there and said, it's come to our attention, to the powers that be, that you and your wife are in possession of something that the zoo is very interested in. We wonder what your intention is. And so we said our intention has always been and continues to be to do something good for the animals. And so they scheduled a meeting. We all sat around a board table, and they said, what would it take to get all that intellectual property from you? And we said, we'd like these things. We'd like you to create an animal enrichment fund. And we offered them $2,500 in seed money. We said, that's all we want you to do is create an animal enrichment fund, because they had none. And we'll give you $2,500 if you match it, and we'll donate all this intellectual property back to the zoo. And it was worth well into the 6 figures. And they looked at us around this big board meeting table and said, well, how on earth would the zoo come up with $2,500?
Really? So, with 1 million guests a year.
Right, and the CEO was making over $300,000 a year. And so we said, well, with all due respect, we'll just hold on to the intellectual property. And that's what led us to create our little grassroots effort of advocacy, as we called it. And they sued us, and all we're allowed to say is we settled out of court, and all we're allowed to say is that the animals benefited. So that's how I got into this whole research into I love puzzles. I love solving mysteries. I love doing good for animals. So combining all those things together, we were able to do that at the zoo. And that led us to a much more altruistic place, which is Colleen, after she left the zoo, we'd always wanted to be a part of Big Cat Rescue, always admired the mission and vision. And I visited on a tour, and Colleen was actually at one point in time offered the part-time education director to share that role with another Beth Cammey, just a wonderful woman that is in the highest regard. And so Colleen began her career at Big Cat Rescue part-time and still continued to hold her position in the school system part-time as a child psychologist. Well, part-time, if anybody knows in the animal nonprofit world, part-time in the nonprofit animal welfare world is like 50 or 60 hours a week minimum. So to see my lovely bride, I actually became a volunteer at Big Cat Rescue and was just loved it, just ate it up, and did that for a couple of years. And then Howard and Carol had seen my passion for the animals and seen my interpersonal communication skills, dealing with people, because I love to give tours. I love to send people away with a positive message and how they could help these animals. And so Howard and Carol created the first development position at the sanctuary. In the corporate world, to be a development director, and in the Big Cat Rescue world, it was a director of donor appreciation. I think that was Carol's idea.
Actually, it was Howie's.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to call me the gift guy. And so that just allowed me to continue my evolution in the animal welfare world, and I focused solely on. So you go from corporate to zoological. I'll define zoological world as, if it's AZA accredited, they're not the problem, they're just not the solution. And in the sanctuary world, when it's GFAS accredited, and it's razor focused, it's laser focused on the animals first, and that really spoke to our soul. And so that's where we thrived. And I really, to be honest, wouldn't have left that world. Colleen left just because to retain her maximum pension, she had to go back into the school system full time. And then she was diagnosed, with cancer, pretty serious cancer, a number of years ago, which I'm blessed to say that she's cancer free. But it caused me to, at the time, refocus and realize that she was my number one priority. And so that caused me to step out of my role at Big Cat Rescue, but still continue to help in any way that I could, which eventually led me to a role in a movie that I never could have imagined, which has just been a great blessing for not only our family, but for the animals.
Well, you must be psychic, because I had forgotten to send you in advance the questions I was going to ask you. So I have them written down here in front of me, and you have gone step by step through every single one of my questions to the next one, which is, how are you still working with animals? Can you talk about what your role was in the conservation game and how that came to be?
Sure. So, and it's thanks to Howard, just a great introduction. It probably was, I can't remember how long after I had retired from Big Cat Rescue, I got an email from Howard Baskin, and he said, we know this director or producer that's, looking to create a documentary, based on animal welfare, revolving around animal welfare, and he needs a good research person. And Howard and I made just the perfect team. We just really worked well together and worked well on issues. And when he needed somebody to dig in deep and find the nuts and bolts, I love the research part of it. And so I said, well, it sounds interesting to me. So he introduced me to Michael Weber, who, award-winning producer, Elephant in the Living Room, and he's also worked in the commercial industry and produced a number of films for, the big box movie studios. And so I got introduced to Michael Weber, and the original interesting fact is, in the conception of all this, I was just going to be a research person. It was going to be Michael Weber and myself primarily working together to research these faux conservationists and the cats we were trying to track. It actually wasn't about till a year in the film, working towards producing the film, that Michael reached out to me, and Mike said, I think the audience might be interested in how we're solving these puzzles, how we're tracking down the cats, how we're looking for them and studying this faux conservationist. And that's actually when he decided to put me in the movie, which I was like, well, I've never been in a movie, but that sounds great to me. And so but for the first probably year, almost year and a half, Mike Weber and I were living virtually 24/7. He was in Ohio, I was in Tampa at the time, and we were we were living, looking at these, Dave Salmani, Jack Hanna, Boone Smith, Jared Miller, and some others, and we had to narrow down the field. We actually had a wider web of people we were looking at, but we had to narrow down the film, or this would have turned into, an 8 or 10 or 12-hour docuseries. So that's how we spent the first year and a half. And it's just been a privilege to work with Mike and Carney Ann Nasser and Tim Harrison and Russ and Keith, two other people in the film. Just been a privilege, and that's where I've dedicated, really, in retirement. That's where I've dedicated probably the last 4.5 years of my life.
And when you were doing research, what kind of research were you doing? Like, what were you looking for?
Sure. So we would start out primarily with the top celebrity folk conservationists, as we came to call them. The Jack Hanna, Dave Salmani was number 2, probably Boone Smith, the big cat expert in the world, Jared Miller, and some others. And so what we would do is we'd look at those folk conservationists, and we'd go to all the TV shows. We research all the TV shows, morning, night, appearances, and we'd look for the cats. Although they showed a lot of animals and exploited a lot of animals on TV and in person, we looked at primarily the big cats. So we'd look for leopard on up, so leopards and lions and tigers, although I tracked anything that was cat related. And then we would look for names and specifics, and we worked our way backwards and try to figure out who obtained the animals and where they then would dispose of the animals. And it was this is what everybody's going to get to see if you haven't seen the conservation game, and it's going to become more widely available in the very near future. But if you haven't seen it, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have enough content to back up, just multiple series, because they exploited these animals 24/7. That was their career. Their career is not conservation. Their career is making money and impressing their egos by exploiting these animals, these magnificent sentient creatures, on TV and in person.
And you guys did an absolutely awesome job, and I would love to see it turned into the series that it should be. And I think that you will be very helpful with the series that we're working on, because what we're out to do is expose the bad guys, and you're just world class when it comes to finding the things they don't want found. So thank you for all of that you have done so far, and all of the stuff I know you're going to do in the future. I'm inviting people up on the stage here now to see if they have any questions of you. Deb,
Sure,
do you want to take it from here and call people up?
Sure. If you do have a question and you haven't been pulled up on stage, please use the little hand raise button at the bottom, and we will call you up. Daniel, you are first. Did you have a question or a comment for Jeff?
Well, question and comment. Well, Jeff, you're just an amazing person, and thank you for all you're doing for the cats.
I very appreciate that.
Yeah. My question is, you worked around cats for a long time. What's your favorite cat species?
Wow, that's a great question, and probably I have to give kudos. One of the blessings of working at Big Cat Rescue, and I mean, it started at the zoo, but then at Big Cat Rescue we worked 24/7 around them, and I don't think I had a favorite species as much as the personalities. The personalities were so individual and so unique that you would have a leopard or a tiger or a lion that you would admire and respect for a different aspect of their personality. Some of the personalities I just admired and respected were, I love it, like Rain Dance, one of the original Bobcats at Big Cat Rescue, would love me to death, from the outside of the enclosure, of course, but I'd be too about that way for years. And then one day she turned around, I was introducing Rain Dance the Bobcat to the crowd, to the tour guests, and she turned around without even blinking and peed on me. And I thought, wow, 3 years she has known my routine. In 3 years she waited to set me up to go ahead and pee on me, to mark me. Whereas some of the species, like some of the larger cats, Joseph the lion and some of the other larger cats, I respected their determination, their fierceness, their aggression, because that's what I explained to the tour guests is that's how a wild cat would act in the wild. That they wouldn't come up in love against the enclosure against you and purr and roar. They're a wild cat in the wild wants to eat you and kill you. So so I admired. I don't think I had a favorite cat in particular, but I had so many that I appreciated and admired their individual personalities. It really gave me a great respect for and admiration for the uniqueness of each and every individual sentient creature there.
Wow, Rain Dance must have liked you very much to mark you. That's like the highest form of respect I can give you.
I've been peed on. I was peed on by a number of cats, so I take it as a great compliment. Although I come home smelling in the middle of the Florida summer, I come home smelling a little strong.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, Dawn. Did you have a question or a comment for Jeff?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Jeff. I just wanted to say, we appreciate what you're doing. And give us one of your favorite memories at Big Cat Rescue, if you want, or two.
Well, I probably have, an infinite list. I think some of the most memorable were the saddest ones, which evokes a lot of emotion within me right now. But it gave me the greatest respect for the people that volunteer and work there, all the way to the top with Jamie and Carol. And because some of the most heartfelt moments were the ones where you had to say goodbye. But the most profoundly inspiring moment, because it inspired you to want to work even harder to make sure that no other sentient creature like these magnificent cats ever had to experience the life that they've been subjected to, even though they have the greatest end of life experience at Big Cat Rescue. I think, some of the funnest moments were seeing all the enrichment giving out. Because, that's the cat's happiest time. The enrichment program at the sanctuary versus the zoo, the Big Cat Rescue, that was the number one primary focus, was feeding and enrichment, health. So getting to see the cat get all their special enrichment. I think one of the funnest times I had was we had MTV at the time had just a nonsense show. It was a dating show, but they came out, they contacted us, wanted to do a show out of Big Cat Rescue and have a couple come out and take a tour of Big Cat Rescue and act like nobody was there. So, of course, at Sanctuary, nobody is ever left out unescorted, but we made it look like that. And so it was a group of, MTV production people and myself leading this couple around, and everybody was ducking between cameras to make sure that no cameras ever made it on the set. So it was just, it was a great time for the cats because, again, a lot of enrichment. The couple went away empowered. And, that's really carried the message even further to an audience that we would have never been able to touch or pay for, to buy in the corporate world. It would cost a fortune to get a show about it, Big Cat Rescue on MTV. But so that was my goal at the sanctuary, was to try to make that connection. We're one of the most abundantly wealthy countries in the world, and we have a lot of need, both animal and human. But it's all about connecting needs and resources. So a great example of that, probably my most profound moment, was I made it my goal before I left the sanctuary to help the sanctuary get a big cat hospital built. And so every single I did a lot of private tours, hundreds of private tours for prospective donors. And I responded to an invitation from a couple that came down, I believe from Ohio. And they just, blue jeans and button-up shirt, just like you and I. And I gave them the tour like I always gave, and connected them with the cats and left them with the same message and left them with our needs and, what we had resources-wise and what we had in needs. I said, we're looking to build a hospital where we can have an x-ray machine on site where we can take care of these cats and not have to take the bigger cats off site for radiography, for x-rays. And they looked at me and they said, and I'd done this for 3 years, and they looked at me and said, we have a small family foundation. We think we might be able to help you with this. And corresponding back and forth for like the next couple of months, they made a donation, a single donation that allowed us to begin construction of the Winsong Memorial Big Cat Hospital, where we were able to build a cat hospital for the cats in, a real quality veterinary hospital. And it eventually made another donation, because when they actually made a donation to actually fund both the building of the hospital and the digital x-ray equipment that we put in the hospital. So I think that's one of my most rewarding times, although the life experience as far as having a connecting time. Well, I'll regress and tell you the funniest time was we had a time when there was a cruise ship that was landlocked in Tampa, in the port of Tampa, and they had a whole cruise ship of Japanese tourists. And they called the Big Cat Rescue, and since the cruise ship was landlocked, they were looking for things. They had to get these tourist guests off the ship while the ship was being repaired and get them things to do so they weren't bored. And Big Cat Rescue came up on the radar, and so they contacted us, and we took took a whole tour full. And so it's the first time in my entire life that I've given a tour with a translator to 30 Japanese tour guests that could speak no English. And so it was really interesting to have an interpreter take what I was saying, interpret to these Japanese tourists, and I actually got bowed to at the end of the tour, which was a one and only at Big Cat Rescue for me.
That is awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, thank you for your interest.
Hi, Paula. Did you have a question or comment for Jeff? I'm sure you do.
Well, it was great to hear you, Jeff. You were before my time at Big Cat Rescue, but I know I've seen you in videos, and I think maybe did you record some of the cat stories?
I worked a lot with Chris Poole at the time, who was our videographer, and then Afton later on. But Chris and I did a number of videos together that I just thoroughly enjoyed. It took me out of my development position, fundraising, because at like any good nonprofit, you wear multiple hats. So everybody's involved in fundraising and promotion and animal care and well-being and all that. So it's possible I did some of those. I've done a number of videos and just thoroughly enjoyed them, because that's it takes me out of those cubicle walls that I sought to leave in the corporate world, and know that you're working instead of for a stockholder, you're working for a living sentient creature. So I had fun doing those videos and podcasts.
Yeah, I enjoyed seeing them, and I always love when there's a new post by you on the Advocate page. I wonder how you get all that information. I mean, you seem to be at the pulse of all the things that are happening out there in the cat world, and I'm wondering how you research that.
Yeah, so when I retired, and then I was, of course, introduced to Michael Weber and started working on the conservation game, I don't want to be bored in retirement, and I've always, I've been working for animals, nonprofit on since probably 1984, just protests and volunteering and doing anything I could. And so it continues into my retirement. And my passion after I left the zoo, and then after the sanctuary especially, was, I worked for a zoo. I mean, we still have friends all over the country that work for zoos. And these are good people. These are animal caretakers. We found that in the zoological world, there are two very distinct sides. There's the operation side, which is all about money and making a dollar, and then there's the animal caretaking side. And those animal caretakers are just like you and I and Carol and Jamie and they are all about them. They have and will give their life for those animals. But when you start butting the heads from the animal caretaking side to the operations, the business side, that's where the problem occurs. That's where the dollar almost always wins. So I started researching. I had volunteered in the outreach or the animal ambassador department of our zoo in Tampa. I'd gone on just countless outreaches, taking the animals, displaying them, talking about education. So it fascinated me when I started. I was wearing blinders. I started researching more about how these animals actually lived, where they were acquired from, where they were disposed of. And it made me want to empower myself even more. And it made me want to help educate the public about that issue, because most people go to a zoo and you only see the public side. You don't see the behind the scenes side. And that's That's what the zoos do very well. They present a really pretty public side. What you don't see is the night houses where they're locked up in concrete and steel cells. I remember one time I was working security at the zoo, and most animals in a zoo get locked up in a night house. So they don't stay up in those big, beautiful public yards because that just doesn't work. That's not the way a zoo functions. So what happens is the public yard that you see the animals in, the public exhibit, they're out there during the day. At the end of the day, the zoo closes at 5, and then the animal caretakers shift them in to a concrete and steel night house for probably, my personal and professional opinion is probably about at least 80 to 85% of those animals go in on night houses. And then what happens is in the morning when the zookeepers come in, the animal caretakers, they go outside, they clean the public yards to make them pretty for the people. And then when the zoo is just about ready to open, they shift those animals through lock gates. They shift them back out to the public yard, lock those gates, lock the animals out there. And then the rest of the day is spent cleaning the night houses, the concrete and steel night houses, and making the diet. And that cycle repeats 24/7. So it really, living this experience and through a lot of just heartbreaking tragedies, it made me want to empower the public as to what I had seen. A great book, if anybody wants to read a book of how a zoo really works, and it doesn't preach like I do quite as much. It's called Zoo Story: Life in the Garden of Captives, and it was written by Thomas French. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and we had the privilege of working with him when he was researching our local zoo in Tampa, and he wrote a series of 9 articles, each published over the course of a weekend. So it was 9 weeks where these articles came out, and then he went on to write a book, and we were kind of just minimally featured in the book. But what it does is it paints the exact picture of how a zoo works, from the good to the bad to the ugly, the business side, the animal caretaking side. He does it in a real easy to read format. You can read the book in 2 or 3 days, and I think people need to be empowered with how a zoo really operates. It's not what you see in the public side. And so as I went into my retirement years, my passion was to take all this information, and my background is really in internet research. A little back history is we had my wife and I had a cat, one of our feline, they're all have been rescues, and one of them came down with a cancer many years ago, back in the mid to late 90s, and the cancer was a result of her vaccination. And it became a passion of mine. This is when the internet was just first starting up, so this wasn't a lot of big internet sites, World Wide Web, sites. It was GeoCities and community groups, and I started publishing a page called Sylvia's Journey of New Hope, our beautiful cat named Sylvia. Sorry for cheering up. And so what the cancer was called vaccine-associated feline sarcoma, which we were totally blown away. We're college-educated people. We thought we were aware of pretty much everything and knew nothing about it. So we made it our mission to learn as much as we could about vaccine-associated feline sarcoma and help empower the world, help prevent them from going through a tragedy that took our child's life. So for about 4 years, that was my first internet mission, to empower the animal world. And in the beginning, we were called alarmist and extremist. We were going to do more harm than good, scare people away from getting their cats vaccinated. But I was working with the best feline minds in the world at UC Davis and Penn State, Colorado State, Cornell. And by the end of our campaign, helping over 10,000 families, we were being used, our internet resources being used as the Cat Fanciers Association, an internet resource for feline vaccination. So it was that's where it all began, Sylvia. So it's been from 1996 on, and the animals have always been our passion.
It's a great answer. Thank you. I just learned so much more. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
CJ, did you have a question or comment for Jeff?
Yes, I do. Hi, Jeff. I'm so glad you made it.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here.
CJ, can you speak? CJ, can you speak up a little bit or get closer to your mic, please?
Oh, dear. Okay, I hope this works. I haven't had a problem before.
No worries, I can hear her.
Okay. Fun fact for anyone, well, the bit about the videos already came out, being on VCR's videos, that not only might you have seen Jeff on the videos, but you probably recognize his voice from the Audible ads at the beginning of some of them.
Yeah.
As you know, Jeff, you were my introduction to VCR back in 2014. I had never been there. I came by just to donate some garden supplies and met you in the gift shop. And we talked for probably an hour. And you gave me a head start on understanding VCR's mission. And I just so thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And later on, I had the privilege of working with you on doing some cub petting research for Carol.
Yeah.
We stayed in touch off and on since then. I am so excited to see the conservation game, and I wish you much success in your future projects. And that leads me to my question was, can you give us any kind of a hint on what might be in store for you next since the conservation game? I mean, once you get past all of the publicity that you're having to do for the movie, what's next? Or can you say?
Yeah, so Carol, and just heartfelt kudos to Carol, because it was just a privilege when Carol reached out and needed some research for these, and these are not AZA accredited, these are just roadside deplorable zoos that were exploiting tiger cubs and lion cubs, and so she needed some research done. So Carol and I, worked on it together tirelessly for quite a while, and I still have all those files, and I still reference some of those roadside zoos when I'm looking for the bad guys to see who's still in business, who might still be a source or a destination for one of the cubs that's been used in entertainment. And we appreciate everybody's patience with regard to the conservation game. I knew that I'm well versed in the animal welfare world. I was a novice in the filmmaking world and have learned a lot in the last 4.5 years. And one is that of patience. And so we are working, the whole team. It's an independent films, so it's a very small team. There's only really 6 of us that were either in or working on the film, and then there's a distribution company right now and a lovely PR woman. And so we are working. It's been a slow, tedious process, but I guarantee you, if you go to theconservationgame.com or if you look us up on Facebook, The Conservation Game Movie, we keep most of the updates on the conservationgame.movie first, and then it goes to the conservation.com on the web. There's going to be some very exciting things happening in November. I just came back from Boston at Harvard University College of Law. We did a screening and question and answer session there. And for anybody that's out there near or close to Texas, we're going to be at a film festival just after Thanksgiving weekend. So 26th, 27th, and 28th in Austin, Texas. It's the Anifab Film Festival. Just Google Anifab, A-N-I-F-A-B, Anifab Festival, Film Fest. It's a 3-day jam-packed, and all the films there, all the documentaries are all about animals. It's just an incredible opportunity. And I'm going to be there. One of my other co-stars is going to be there. Michael Weber is going to be in via Zoom. We're going to be actually featured on premiere night, on opening night on Friday, and also screen another day. And then I'm going to be part of a workshop on Saturday. But so where I'm going after is kind of interesting. I didn't know, I've turned down a number of invitations to either work or volunteer because I wasn't sure what I want to do after this. It hasn't finished, and I didn't want to overcommit myself. And so I've kind of take a step back and wait and see what comes to me. And it's really been fascinating because of the tiger stripe matching that I helped facilitate in the conservation game. I've actually been approached by several different groups that have needed or requested assistance matching cats because they're working on either podcasts or documentaries or things like that, that they were trying to determine whether a tiger they were looking at was actually the tiger that the people were claiming it to be. And it's a really fascinating thing. So I was kind of inspired by that. So I've kind of taken another step back to wait to see what comes to me, because I obviously want to remain completely connected to animal welfare and do what I can for all of the animals. And I'm very excited about it. I'd like to be, with COVID going on, I'd love to be able to do something remotely, and be able to be, as I've been since, the 80s. I'd like to do something for the animals that benefits their well-being, that stops the private ownership, that stops the exploitation and entertainment. I guarantee it's going to be one of those two things. It has to be related to that. It has to stop the exploitation of exotic animals. It just has to involve that. So I'm really excited. I'm kind of waiting to continue to see who approaches me. I've got a number of speaking engagements, and I want to see where, it's always about the introduction. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. So I can't wait to be introduced to new people to see what might be the next step for me. I want to make it the most efficient step for the animals. I don't just want to take a position to take a position. I want to take a position that's going to best benefit the animals.
I'm sure after the film has become more well-known, you will have them lined up at your door to use some of your skills. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. Thank you for, just everything you do for the cats, for Big Cat Rescue, and for all your work. I thoroughly enjoyed working with you hand in hand. I have all those spreadsheets and multiple files, and I keep those because they're valuable, because those are sentient beings with pictures that, they're not forgotten.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed getting to talk to you again.
My pleasure.
Hi, Nancy. Did you have a question or comment for Jeff?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jeff. I think Carol took a good bit of my question. And I know that you're waiting to see how things open up regarding people that you meet and projects that are presented to you later. But is there anything specific in animal care or advocacy that you really would want to do that you haven't been able to do yet?
I think that I'd like to continue on the path, because we've really got a laser focus now on this whole ambassador. So when we talk about the film, The Conservation Game, and we talk about the cats, profoundly important species, but for me, it's all the species. So when we talk about the ambassador animals that you see on TV or at the local fair or at any venue, realize, for example, the Columbus Zoo, it's not just cats, it's not just primates. Those are obviously some of the most important species in their minds because they draw the most people. But as I remember, the Columbus Zoo's ambassador animal department had over 38 species, probably 130 plus animals, 25 employees. And what really disturbs me and something makes me want to work harder to make this end is it's time for zoos to stop standing on this platform of education and conservation when in reality their main business is making a profit. And so what I think they need to be is transparent. If a zoo came out and said, listen, our business is making a profit, and then all this other stuff comes around it, I wouldn't be as disturbed because they're being transparent. What bothers me, what disturbs me is the fact that the whole AZA and zoos, their mission vision is based all upon this platform of education and conservation, when in fact it's all about the dollar. If you look at the collective revenue of AZA accredited zoos versus what they actually contribute in direct funds to conservation in the wild, it's usually the ballpark guesstimate, the best guesstimate is 2 to 5%. Well, that's just nonsense. That's the CEOs are all making mostly making over $200,000 or $300,000. It's mostly going towards salaries. Some of them have now become amusement parks. The LA Zoo recently came out just 2 weeks ago with an announcement that they have a 20-year vision plan to make themselves more competitive with SeaWorld and the amusement parks, and they're going to invest $670 million towards that. And for me, that's an insult to what you're saying you're about. So my passion is to empower the public with regard to what zoos are all about, and then let the consumer, let us make the best decision. If you told me that, well, I'd never go to a zoo. But they're not. They're selling the zoo as a conservation education mechanism, and it's not. That's not the truth. So my passion is going to be towards, I think this ambassador animal focus for me is something that goes right down to my roots, having worked with them, hands-on worked with them, and then learning about what it was really about and wanting to make a difference. And we're seeing some positive change in the zoos, Columbus being a primary example. They're not going to take any primates or cats off-site anymore to be exploited. That's a partial solution. But that's how evolution takes place. It's step by step. So I want to be part of that. Continue to be part of that step by step. I want to finish this mission. I want to finish this and make sure that as few as animals as possible, with the ultimate goal of none, be exploited again for entertainment or pseudo or faux education or conservation efforts.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information, a lot of new information, even to what you had already said. So that's awesome.
Thank you for your interest and passion for the animals.
Thank you.
Hi, Griff, and welcome to the Big Cats Clubhouse. We're happy that you're here. Did you have a question or comment? Be sure to unmute your mic.
While he's doing that, let me tell you, Griff is working with us on Carol Baskin's Cage Fight. He's a homicide detective who is helping us track down these bad guys and the things that they're doing. Very much the same kind of work that Jeff does. In fact, he was texting me in the back here asking whether Jeff was involved with helping us put together the list of all of these exploitive places, which of course Jeff was. Yeah, there he is. Hi, Griff.
Hey, sorry about that. A little bit of user error there. So, yeah, Jeff, just top on to what Carol was saying, I guess you could say that I'm Carol and Howard's one of their investigators now. And I have worked many cases in the past that have been ongoing cases for years, and you take a look at intel that was gathered from somebody before you or something like that, and you look at it, you almost want to pull your hair out at the quality of work that was done or the inquality of work. And I just wanted to thank you because the work that you put in these spreadsheets was phenomenal. The detail was there and everything that was needed to build cases that not only make something happen, but build a case that gets a conviction or has a positive result, and in this case, something positive for the big cats.
No, I appreciate that, Chris. It takes me back to working with Carol Judge and being able to, databases are pretty, bland, and when you look at them, but the content is what's valuable. And when I was at Harvard University College of Law just this past week, one of the fellows that I ran into that was at the screening and the Q&A was actually a forensic veterinarian, and I thought, well, that's fascinating. Her whole focus was on how she was fascinated by how we forensically put this film together, and that is Michael Weber's total credit to Michael Weber's vision for the film. And so I asked her what she was working on, and her fellowship is all about studying how all these animal abuse and neglect cases make it through the court systems. They seem to work their way down the road, and then some of them just falter off. They just disappear. And so her whole fellowship is based on trying to see if there's a common denominator or a set of facts or reasons why that happens so that they can better address prosecution of animal exploiters and abuse cases. And so I appreciate your kind comments, because those spreadsheets for me, I'm not a spreadsheet guy, but it was great populating them all, and I didn't want to put in too much information. So it's great that it was helpful, and I just applaud you for what you guys are doing, because these guys will not back down. And so we need to let them know that you can't defend wrong has always been my mantra. So bring it on. Challenge accepted.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Once again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, Shalita, and welcome to Big Cats Clubhouse. We're happy that you're here. Did you have a question or comment for Jeff?
Yeah, I did, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. Thank you, Deb, Carol, Karen, Jeff, for having me here. It's my first time on the stage. My question is, because a lot of the consumers are not really fully involved with the behind the scenes of, the mission that you guys have, what can we do to stay vigilant to not support like animal abuse? Like what are the telltale signs, or what should flail our ear that will be like suspicious enough to investigate like certain like institutions or places that they actually exploit animals and cats. So
Yeah, great question. It's something that I would always talk about on my public tours and private tours of Big Cat Rescue, because it was my podium to be able to help people make that. I don't say there's a right or a wrong decision. There's just a best decision, and that can vary from person to person, individual to individual. And so the key things would be obviously that a good organization, an animal organization, isn't going to buy, sell, breed, or trade animals. Just that's you can research it. If you're able to research it beforehand, you happen to have the ability to do that, and look at their website or look at their Facebook presence and make sure they aren't buying, selling, trading. They're interacting physically with the animals. The other thing is to look for the GFAS accreditation, the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. I would always defer toward a GFAS accredited sanctuary before anything else. If I had to, if people, because it's tradition, it's part of our culture. So if you have family that says, I just want to go to a zoo, well, make sure that zoo's AZA accredited, but make sure that you look for that behind the scenes tour. I always encourage people to take that behind the scenes tour, because they all offer that behind the scenes tour. And then you're going to get a very real picture of how the animals really live. So at least make sure that you're seeing the real picture. And so once you do all that, some people will do that and say, well, okay, I'm okay with that. Well, then that's not my audience, because you can't, not everybody's going to be on the same page. It's not all black or white. The world is gray. So I think that you just need to empower yourself. So whether you can research the organization online, that's a telltale. Whether they're interacting, if they have hands-on with the animals, it's a telltale sign. You can go to charitynavigator.org, charitynavigator.org, and that rates a nonprofit organization by numerous factors. And Big Cat Rescue continually gets rated as one of the highest in the country, and that gives you a breakdown of where their funds are going. Just a wonderful breakdown of the organization. So there's whether it be via their internet or whether your family just stopped over for the Thanksgiving weekend and said, hey, I want to go to the local zoo. Well, before you just buy your general admission ticket, hey, look online, try to see if they do a behind the scenes tour, because I'm confident almost all of them do. And take that behind the scenes tour and give your family a real view of how those animals live their lives. And I think then we all walk away and we say, listen, okay, now I'm empowered with information and I make the best decision. Again, not right or wrong, just best.
Well, thank you so much. Such information, and now I'm going to go look up. And I just also want to say I'm a big fan of all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Callie. Welcome. Did you have a question or comment for Jeff?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Carol. Thanks for inviting me to the stage. I just got here a little while ago and was reading the room, and I just wanted you to know I'm excited to hear about the work you're doing and learning more about possibly how I could get involved. I admire what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a question.
Well, thanks for your interest and your support, though.
Thank you.
Hi, Keith. Did you have a question or a comment for Jeff? Be sure to unmic yourself at the bottom right.
Hello?
There you are. Did you have a question for Jeff?
How you doing, everybody? I just love hearing everything about what's going on. I'm in awe of Jeff, Carol, everything she does. I just feel like I want to get to the children that are growing up not knowing about this, and is there a easy way to do it?
Yeah, and a great question with not, I think it all begins, the children are the next generation, and that's actually when you get to see the conservation game, that's where it all begins. It tells the story of that. It begins with a person that was, introduced. I'll admit I'm just turned 61, grew up with, all the old conservationists, on TV and just was glued to the TV set. And that's the start and the end of the conservation game. So it begins with the parents. The parents have to be the ones that introduce the younger generation to, they empower them with, just don't take them to a zoo, don't take them to an amusement park, take them, again, for that behind-the-scenes tour. Let them see the reality of animals living in captivity. Take them to a sanctuary, and they'll get to see the animals living in a captive environment, but they'll get to hear the stories of why they're there. So you have to empower the children. I've come across just countless wonderful animal advocates that have told me stories of how I've always evolved not wanting to go to a zoo. It just always disturbed me, and my parents it always went back to the parents. It's the connector. It has to be someone empowering the children, the next generation. And this generation is a generation that has a chance to put an end to all this exploitation. And when we're seeing that happen, you see it with blackfish, you see it with ringling going out of the animal, you see it with new being made in the animal welfare world. It takes a long time, but we're seeing more change happen in the last 10 years than we've seen in the last 100 years. And that I never thought I'd see that happen. So when we see this, and the Big Cat Public Safety Act will be passed, rest assured, that is, I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. So it's empowering people with knowledge. You have to, with an adult or a juvenile or a child, with knowledge. So what starts is taking the child, you're taking a child, or speaking to them, reading a book to them about a sanctuary. They need to know, people need to know where they take them, where they go to, where they should, where they ideally live, which is in the wild.
Jeff, we keep losing
Thank
you.
so much. Yeah, Jeff, you're in the matrix. That's what we call it, the matrix.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that answer. I really appreciate it. And keep doing what you're doing and let us know any help, and we can help you out.
Oh, we appreciate your interest and support.
Thank you so much.
And Jeff, I'll just piggyback onto what Key was talking about with the kids. So my background is a pediatric nurse, and so I've been involved with kids, since I was in my early 20s or before. And but 3 years ago, I brought my 2 oldest granddaughters to the sanctuary for a tour. And the 6-year-old at the time, who's now 9, almost 10, talks every time we're together about the cats and about them living in captivity. And she is, it really makes my heart happy because she is definitely going to be an advocate, and she talks to her classmates and her teachers. And last year when they had Zoom meetings, she would be here at my house a lot because they couldn't go to school and I was home. And, she would talk about the cats, and like when she had to, give a presentation or something, she always brought the cats into it. So I do think that, just at 6 years old, empowering her with the opportunity to see a sanctuary and learning about cats in captivity made a huge difference in her. And I can see her talking about it now to her classmates, and hopefully that, will spread as those kids grow and get older. So.
Absolutely. Back to just a reminiscent story. When I was at Big Cat Rescue, I had the privilege of serving as host to some Make-A-Wish Foundation tours, and we did a lot of nonprofit charity work for. It's all about making a positive. Kudos to Howard, Carol, and Jamie for making, and the sanctuary and everybody involved, volunteers and staff, for making a positive difference in the community. It's not just about the cats; it's about the community. And I was serving as host to a young girl, probably 8 or 9 years old. It was a brain cancer patient, and wow. So we were up by one of our tigers, and I had all my cat facts and all the educational stuff and the fun stuff, which is about making their day smile. And so it was just she and her parents, and I said, well, so and so, how big an area do you think that this tiger would have in the wild to live? Because, I've got all my cat facts, and it's going to be how many square miles in the wild, right? And she goes, well, as much room as he wanted. He's a tiger. I'm like, wow, the kids get it. The kids get it. They haven't been human imprinted to believe or focus on a certain way. So absolutely, the kids are a way to, if you introduce them to all the conservation and the welfare issues when they're younger, they're going to grow up with that and they absorb it, and they're going to be that next generation that is able to carry forth what we're starting right now or what we're continuing to carry forth. So I agree. My wife's a child psychologist for 30 years, and it's about the kids absorb that kind of information, and they're our hope for the future, and it's important.
I agree. I mean, it has to start now with us, but I think, leading that next generation into learning about conservation and not keeping them in captivity is so important.
Yeah. So when you see when everybody gets a chance to see the conservation game, and again, just conservationgame.com or the conservation game movie on Facebook, it has a profound message directly focused on exactly what you and I are talking about, and it'll be pertinent. So I encourage that.
Karen, I know you're sitting there with a handful of questions, and you've just been biting your tongue, waiting your turn.
I'm the question woman, but I know it's getting late, and I don't want to keep everybody. My question was just a simple one. Have people treated you differently now that they kind of know who you are in the industry? I mean, from what you said, they kind of knew who you were anyway. But now that you are exposing actual terrible, terrible people, have people treated you different negatively or positively? Or have they just not treated you differently at all?
Yeah, great question. We found that with the film, we expected a lot more pushback. Michael Weber is a director-producer that is laser focused on facts. So there's not a reasonable aspect of doubt. It's facts. So one of the film festivals we're going to be participating in at ANAFAP out in Austin, Texas, in the Thanksgiving weekend, the festival director asked me, so I thought you guys would be getting a lot more hate and a lot more, negative feedback and all this. The reason we haven't is because everything was well researched and everything we present is 100% fact, and we have fact to back up the fact. So nobody has really contested this. It's interesting that within the industry, within the zoological world, I've been reached out to via Facebook and social media. Nothing negative. I mean, there's people that, have been Jack Hanna supporters for 40 years, but there's nothing to debate. You can't debate wrong. So I'm proud to say that thanks to Michael Weber's laser-focused vision and mission for the film and the way that they called me I can't remember, they had a nickname for me because the way that I fact find, we've presented nothing, but there's nothing to debate. Everything we have is fact-based. So we really haven't received the hate mail. What we're waiting for is everybody sitting on the sidelines. So, Jack Hanna's family, dementia, and he's not making public appearances. Although I have to say today, I actually got some, I continue to follow all these faux conservationists in social media and online in the virtual world. And Jack Hanna is out there, hiking and visiting with people and shopping, and in contrast to what we're hearing from other public people. But I track, Boone Smith and Jared Miller and Dave Salmani, and follow them because I want to make sure that they're all sitting on the sidelines. So is ABC, so is Animal Planet, so is Discovery Channel. And we're kind of curious about that. The whole world has picked up on our film outside of the U.S. And what we believe is that inside the United States, we're not being picked up on a big level yet. And I say yet, is because that all the people we've exposed are directly associated or linked to all these entertainment companies, ABC, Animal Planet, Discovery. And so we're waiting for them to get off the sideline. And if they don't get off the sideline, we are going to make them get off the sideline.
Well, I asked because what I do also, I know you've seen me in the Advocates group, but I also coordinate the main page, the main Facebook page, and there are people that are adamant about Hannah. You know, they watched them all these years, and so and I've said that to them. You know what? This is pure fact. There's no question here. You can't argue what's fact. So I just wondered if you were getting that kind of thing. Now, that's only when we put it, when Carol or Deb or someone posts something about it, and then that brings the people in, of course. So I just wondered, because you're a movie star now, and I wondered if people were going to react to you differently now.
You're very kind, but I'm a nobody.
No, you're a somebody, believe me.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I live in a little rural community in North Georgia, and when we go to these screenings, we were anticipating a significant feedback when we went out to Santa Barbara and San Diego and DC and all that, and we have not received anything but love and like-minded support, and I think that's because most of the country and most of the world population is like-minded, just like us. And the people that are looking to debate you or contradict you, the people that love Jack Hanna or Dave Salmani or any of the other folk conservationists, they're basing it on emotions, not fact. So again, bring it on, challenge accepted. If you want to come to me, I love intellectual debate. I would love for these people that have an issue to come to me, and let's engage in a civil, educated debate about it, because you can't defend wrong. And so the worst that we've seen is people that say, well, Jack Hanna has dementia. And God, I pray for the family, because in our family we've lost two parents to that. But Jack Hanna didn't have dementia for 40 years. So you can't defend how he treated animals, how he exploited animals for 40 years on the last whatever years of his life. So, again, that's not the issue. The issue is the animals, and we need to keep laser focused on that. And again, just like you've proudly done it, it's all based on fact, and that's why we've received so little flack and so little pushback from that.
I mean, I think people in the animal world are so very, very happy and excited and grateful that this is happening and being shown to people on camera, on film, because sometimes that's the only way to get through. And as horrible as it is, even other animal programs that we've watched over the years are just so, they just stay in your mind, and they're disgusting. But if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you've done. You're an amazing human being and an advocate, and thank you so much. And thank you for answering my question.
Well, I appreciate that. And just a quick side note is that you have to really realize that these people that are up on pedestals, they have lied to for decades. And so there's a particular moment in the film where Jack Hanna's on film saying that there's a snow leopard that's wailing, crying, a young snow leopard. He's singing out to audience of hundreds, saying, "Oh, don't worry, folks. If you think that we pull them from their mothers or something, that's not the case. He's just whatever." I have, and I continue to keep it on my iPhone, a video clip that I researched years ago that shows where the Columbus Zoo obtained their snow leopards. And I have them at some type of Comic-Con event or something, some little convention. And they have the animal handler from this Tanganyika Wildlife Park, which is where Columbus Zoo obtained most of their snow leopards, because Columbus Zoo doesn't have snow leopards. They just brought them in to show them out and pimp them out and exploit them. So I have a video clip of this animal handler from Tanganyika Wildlife Park in Kansas handling a snow leopard cub that doesn't even have its eyes open. And the boy and the father are asking intelligent questions. And they're saying, well, where, the mom and the dad, where's the mom? And the handler actually says on the video says, oh, well, they don't stay with their moms. We pull them from their mothers from 7 to 10 days old. And then they imprint them. So I think that, again, the public has been deceived and lied to. Realize that when you see them on TV, on the Tonight Show or the morning shows or any other venue like that, they've been lied to. That's not ill intent by these TV media organizations, they didn't know better. They've been lied to as well. So it's something that we're proud to expose, and we will not stop until everybody's empowered and the exploitation of these magnificent cats stops.
Jeff, you have been such a delight. And Deb, I want you to tell everybody what to expect next week and then invite everyone to open their microphones to wish Jeff well.
Next week is going to be really exciting. So next Saturday, probably most of you in this room already know, because we've been talking about it now for several weeks, is our virtual Wildcat Walkabout. It used to be in person, but because of COVID, it is now virtual, and it was last year as well. And so next week, all day on multiple social media platforms, we will be doing live videos. We will have a lot of recorded videos. We have a lot of things going on all day long. And at 6 o'clock, a number of the staff and keepers have also been invited to join us here on Clubhouse to take your questions about the day. Maybe you just want to make a comment about something that went on at the walkabout, or maybe you have a question about something that wasn't answered in a video. And so we would welcome you back. Be sure and get your $4.99 ticket to the walkabout at bigcatrescue.org/safari-days. And you can get your ticket. And then next Saturday, all day will be our walkabout. And then at 6 o'clock, a number of them will be joining us here. So if you have any questions, you can always, my contact information is in my bio, and you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you with that if you have any questions. So if everybody on stage would please, Carol, did you have something else?
Nope. I was just getting ready to applaud.
Okay.
Well, one last quick comment is just a heartfelt appreciation from myself to Howard, Carol, Jamie, and all the volunteers and staff at Big Cat Rescue, because my life experience there and with them and being nurtured under and with them has helped me make the animal welfare advocate that I am. So just a great, tremendous, heartfelt appreciation to Howard, Carol, Jamie, and everyone associated with Big Cat Rescue.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Yay. Thank you.
You were awesome.
Yeah, I just have to say that I am proud to be a fighter, and I'm going to be the voice for these cats.
Congrats. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for joining, and we will hopefully see you next week at 6 o'clock in the Big Cats room at Clubhouse. Have a good night, guys.
For sure. Good night.
Bye,
everybody.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye, thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.